Welcome back to part 2 of our world building series, and today we are going to step into the area of monsters, magic, and superhuman abilities. We're going to look at all the fine details of your world, and we're going to look at some common mistakes, and even some stupid mistakes that writers have made. That's what's coming up on today's episode of The Story Detective. I'm Robert Jones. Stay tuned. If you like this video, I hope you'll subscribe. And if you subscribe, remember to like and share and ring that bell so you'll be notified of my future uploads. Conflict, and let's talk about that for a minute. Do I have to tell you that your story needs conflict or it's not a story? Most of you probably not, but I'm still running into writers who believe that a story does not need conflict, but your character is going to run into some kind of opposition, and within that opposition there are personal demons to overcome, there are things that's going to get in the way that exacerbate the conflict or prevent them from a peaceful or quick solution. Otherwise, there's no story, and you don't have to conform and be like a blockbuster movie with all kinds of explosive action and car chases. That's just their version of overly dramatized problems. It could be a very emotional problem. It could be finding love. It could be finding yourself in the world. Novels take a wide variety of conflicts. There's subtle conflict, and then there's the ultra drama. It doesn't need to change your story. It doesn't mean that you have to conform to what's popular. It just means that you need to have a problem and engage people that are interested in seeing how your main character solves that problem. But once you have your hero and villain established, they're the opposite ends of that spectrum, that conflict that has been created in your universe. And both of them believe that they're heroes. If you want to go back and look at my video on villains, there's a lot about the psychology of the villain in that. And if you think about that and bring that to your hero, kind of a similar psychology applies, but on a different spectrum. Just as the hero has his flaws, the villain has their good points. Your hero, to them, looks like the young upstart. They're coming into a system that they don't understand. We've built all this. It's for your good. And the hero is looking to tear it down. From the hero's point of view, they're looking at all the flaws and the corruption that came about, that they were born into. They don't know necessarily what came before, or maybe they do and they just don't agree with it. They symbolize the hope for something better, the breaking out and becoming something more than they already are. In terms of environment, in terms of the vocation, in terms of their economy, everything within your story has to build up to the point that separates your hero and villain and puts them on opposing sides of the same journey, the same equation, but with different and opposing agendas. But their goals are exactly the same, they're identical, and they both believe that they are right. We need to have a frank discussion about magic, monsters, and superpowered beings, gods, and how they fit into the world. Whether it's the past, the present, the future, or even a made-up world that you've created from whole cloth. And you can go all the way back to high school, or probably before high school in social studies, and they will tell you that our system is very fragile. A little thing could dismantle our entire society. And that's still very true. If you think about what's considered power in our little realm, it's usually money. And money is borrowed power at best. We use it to buy things that we want, buy favors from people if you're rich and powerful to get your way. It's also the crux of everything that comes along. We want to own it, we want to assimilate it, take it apart, use it, weaponize it for more money and control. Then what happens if there's a world where there's actually monsters or magic or superhuman beings? We're going to want to control that. Our fears are going to take over because the fear is there because we know society. Even those who are ruling it know it's a fragile existence. Something like that could totally take it apart. So the first thing we're going to do, if that appears this world or another, human nature is going to try to buy it. If we can't buy it, we're going to try to take it, analyze it, cut it apart, and use it for ourselves. If we can't buy it and we can't utilize it or weaponize it, then we're going to try to kill it. If we can't kill it, that changes everything. I mean, money is the paper that's printed on. Our entire system is now restructured because there's real power. It's not borrowed power. And this isn't to say that humans can't convince people with superpowers or magic or even gods to fight on our side, even if it's the wrong side. Again, go back through history as far as you want, and humans are very manipulative. They're very cunning. And I can see us, whether it's something that's like ancient gods coming back, people developing superhuman abilities through some type of event, or even aliens coming down from another world, we would easily try to manipulate and convince them. But what happens when these superpower beings find out that they've been lied to and that the things they're doing have been wrong, that they've been used? Humans, I can almost guarantee, are going to become something that these people cannot trust. And if you can't trust humans, let's face it, throughout history, we have paid the price for bad decisions for people in leadership positions. Now, if you're in a world where there's metahumans or super beings or gods, we could all be paying the price for that usage and that manipulation once they figure out, hey, humans are no good. They're a bunch of lying bastards. They're all bad. So humans could be on the lower end of the chain. If in your fantasy realm these creatures exist, they come popping out of the woodwork, I can almost guarantee humans are going to screw it up. Because we always do. The things to keep in mind from humans, from our perspective, we're going to try to manipulate it, subjugate it, and destroy it. And failing that, they're going to try to destroy us. Or subjugate or manipulate us. It's going to be a reversal. Talk about the epic stories like Game of Thrones. You may want to write the next fantasy epic with family trees, multiple kingdoms, and establish a cast of characters that's very broad. But what I say to this is, a writer has to know their own strengths. If you're a wizard at characterization and diversity, then this story would certainly be something that you could write well. But if you have trouble with 6 or 8 characters, making them very different and diverse, maybe it's not time to write an epic yet. Maybe you need to get another novel or 2 under your belt and understand how these things play out so you can do it more easily, because the more characters you have, the more diversity, the more complex. That's not an easy story to write. And I tried to write them early on, and I've met with my failures. I learned from those lessons, so I wouldn't tell you not to write it, but be prepared for difficulty, and if it doesn't turn out right the first time, maybe you put it away and write something else and come back to it. A good piece of advice that I got as a writer, don't try to go where you haven't yet begun. That being said, when you're set on writing an epic kind of story like that, I've had the best success by taking each of the characters and figuring out their arcs first. Once I figured out their story and then figured out the others and how they kind of commingled, and almost writing it like each character was a separate story within a story, and those stories were going to interact with one another, I developed the basis for something that would be a much larger story, and then I began to expand and grow beyond that. So once you get the foundational things of your world set, then get the foundational thing of each character set. Don't try to skip back and forth constantly in the beginning until you know where that character is going and have some idea of what their arc is going to be and how that affects the story as a whole. Then everything they do will have more meaning, and you'll be able to navigate your complex world a little bit more easily. This is a message more for the guys. When you're writing a fantasy story and you have a group of warriors, for example, your guys are all armored up and protected, and then your female warriors are half naked. That may work fine for the guys, but then you come to the women and they're saying, okay, where's this character's body armor? Why isn't she treated like a realistic human being? And you're losing part of your audience. So you have to really factor in reality over your libido sometimes. Think about the times that you've seen guys armored to the hilt with weapons, 13 spears and swords. There's tons of stuff that they wouldn't even be able to carry. Then you've got this chick over here, and she's got a short sword or a dagger, and her boobs may be encased in steel because you always have to protect those boobs, but everything else is exposed and you could gut her in a second. It's not realistic. It's not flattering. And if you have to expose people to make them look sexy, then write a goddamn sex scene. Not every scene has to be about exposure and making your characters look stupid. I've also come across people who say they have trouble writing diverse characters or ethnic characters or characters from a different culture because they haven't experienced those cultures for themselves. And that's fine. I understand coming to those areas and saying, I'm afraid I'm going to screw it up. But a big clue right here is no matter what character you're writing, wherever they come from on the planet, whatever their cultural background is, write them as human beings and you can't go wrong. Everybody has the same basic ideas. And if it's a fantasy story, you're kind of coming up with your own culture, but it's based on things that we know from our reality and little slivers are taken from it. A little bit of research, a little bit of common sense can go a long way here. Diversity. If you think about it, we have in humanity a constant battle between diversity and fear. We fear what's different. We fear change. Fear underlies so much of our reality. Humanity has proven time and time again that we have nothing to fear but fear itself, but we fear everything because our egos, our reality, our infrastructure are so fragile that we can't get beyond ourselves, and we never seem to mature or grow beyond that state. It's why technology changes, but people don't. We stay the same century after century, make the same stupid mistakes again and again. It's the heart of all conflict, and it's where anxious uncertainty rules the realm of fiction. If you can do as much for your characters, if you can bring that into your world, then I guarantee you everyone is going to relate to that because we experience it on a daily basis. It's where irony twists the dagger of dichotomy and deceit, even when characters are deluding themselves. This is the nucleus of what seduces readers. It's what makes your world relatable. Language is tough. You have to sit down and come up with a completely different language to impress your readers? No. But if you use a lot of slang that's common in our world, especially if it's current slang, that's going to change in another 5 to 10 years, and there's going to be new slang and it's going to be dated. Come up with your own slang, but don't make it so unfamiliar that people won't understand it. Another thing is when you're coming up with things like you want things to be familiar, so they're sitting down and they're going to have a cup of coffee or hot chocolate. Do they have coffee and hot chocolate on another planet? Think of some other name to call it. If they're drinking a hot beverage when they're sitting down for comfort purposes, your readers will understand that. You don't necessarily have to call it hot chocolate or coffee. You can call it anything you want. It's the scene that's important and the emotion of the scene, not the fact that they have to drink a beverage that we're all familiar with. You can tell when somebody tries to force fit something into a world that doesn't quite gel. Use these examples and follow through with everything. If you find yourself doing it, stop. Think of another choice. There's always other choices. And you're a writer, you're creative, right? So it should be easier for you to make up some details and describe things that will sound familiar, comforting, hot, cold beverages, whatever they're doing from their clothing, right on down. You don't want to sound like you're writing it on the planet Earth when these people had never contacted Earthlings with their colloquialisms and their habitual things that are commonplace for human beings. So keep it fresh, make it your own, don't fall into this trap. If you've enjoyed these videos, I hope you'll come back for more. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you next time right here on The Story Detective.